Many of us want to know how to sell more and stand out in our respective businesses, yet so few of us are actually doing that. We're going to talk about it on today's podcast and why creativity is something that many people aren't valuing enough. In fact, if you can be more creative in your business and think outside the box, the journey of standing out and being the easy choice for your prospective buyer becomes even more simple. Hey, my name's Blake Benz. I'm the host of the Good Advice Podcast, and you've come to the right place to learn how to do business better, to sell more stuff, and more importantly, to learn how to scale your business with actionable, practical steps that actually work. We're going to get into it today, but before we do, we have a word from one of the incredible businesses that sponsors the podcast. Check this out, and we'll be right back soon. There's one single piece of advice that I give to business owners who are ready to scale their business drastically, and that's knowing exactly what you need to hand off so that you can continue focusing on what you're an expert in. It amazes me when I talk to business owners who are doing their own bookkeeping and tax prep, and worse, that they're going through all this paperwork at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, even midnight, slaving away trying to make sense of all of the numbers for their business. Business owners who are making it happen have already figured out that you can't do it all yourself. That's why I recommend Steve Lay with Equity Business Solutions. Not only is he an expert in bookkeeping and tax prep, but what I love about Steve is that he'll sit down with you and help you make sense of the value of your business beyond just reading a spreadsheet. You'll be able to make better decisions, and more importantly, you're going to save yourself the crucial time you would have spent going through QuickBooks or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever it is that keeps us up late at night. So save yourself some time and some money by giving Steve Lay a call at Equity Business Solutions, and he'll show you the value beyond your numbers. Go to equitybusinesssolutionsllc.com to find out more. So let me get my notes up over here. I get my notes in front of me. Notes in terms of I got some data points for today's episode. I want to talk about creativity and how this is such an undervalued skill set when it comes to running an incredible business. I want to talk about how, man, it feels like so many people are doing the same thing, trying the same thing, and getting mediocre results and wondering, what am I missing? Why isn't this working? In fact, there are some certain sleazy digital marketers out there who are selling scripts and just say this, or if you just write this in the one email, it's going to close you all this business, which if you're a little bit more naive, maybe you've paid for something like that. I'll go ahead and tell you there is no one line, there is no one phrase, there is no just do this silver bullet that can make your business suddenly an overnight success. Business success comes from learning who your customer is, understanding the problems they have, and selling a product or service that removes the pain, that solves the problem that your customer is facing. Everything beyond that is simply a scaling conversation. So let's get into it today. Let's talk about this today. I'm feeling a little feisty because I'm getting winded isn't really the right word, but it's kind of that. I feel like I am rolling my eyes so constantly that they're about to fall out of my head. I mean, let me pull up some data points here, some things here that I think are kind of interesting. So let me get the first one up. Did you hear me typing way over here? So I have this email. It came in, looks like 10 days ago, and it reads that the title is Loving the Good Advice Podcast, Do Business Better with Blake Benz. And the first sentence says, I am loving the Good Advice Podcast, Do Business Better with Blake Benz. I have a guest for you who I think would be really relevant. And here's what's really interesting, okay? I got this email on the 9th of November. Directly below that, from a different company, I have another email. And this email is titled, Loving the Good Advice Podcast, Do Business Better with Blake Benz. And the first line reads, I am loving the Good Advice Podcast. I have a guest who I think would be really great. You see where I'm going with this. I have the same email on the 25th. In fact, I have two on the 25th. I have one on the 14th, another on the 16th of September, the 10th of September, and then I have four of them in August in 1 week alone. These are all from different businesses that are all saying the same thing. Does this mean that they're all going to ChatGPT and ChatGPT is giving them all the same script? I mean, I don't know. But it is a clue in to many of us who tried to sell more. And then we wonder, why do our buyers not respond to us? In many cases, our buyers don't respond to us because we sound just like everybody else. Let's think, for example, about the F word in sales, the dirty word, one of the worst things that you can say in a sales email or a voicemail or a text or what have you. Just following up. This is the thing that everyone says in a message. Everyone is firing off emails like this that are, hey, just following up, just seeing how things are going. And I get all sorts of different versions of this, different versions of the follow-up email. I get a lot of, is now a bad time, Blake? Or did you get my previous email? The more I think about it, the more I'm just like, man, everybody is really just saying the same thing. Everybody's just saying the same thing. I think sometimes in business, we don't know what to do. And so because of that, we look to see what other people are doing, assuming that that's a best practice. And then we start to do it ourselves because we're like, it seems like it's working for that person. Now, a lot of times people lie, they exaggerate. There's hyperbole. They made one sale for $1,000 and they talked about it being 10 sales that were $15,000 each. They lie about the business success that they're having. All this to say, we look to people to figure out how to do business. And there's never a question of, is this really effective? Is this really working? Is this really how I'm supposed to do it? I have a lot of appreciation for the trailblazers out there who are actually trying to reach out to people in a different way, who aren't just spamming inboxes, who aren't just giving the elevator pitch or the email blurb on here's everything about our business and our latest offer, or here's what we can do for you. Or another annoying DM I get a lot is, we just took blank company from, $10,000 months to $40,000 months in just 30 days. Would you be interested? And just exchange the company that's listed there with any other random company, exchange the dollar amount with any other random dollar amount. And you have about 90% of every email that gets sent to me or DM that gets messaged to me. There's no creativity in sales anymore. There's no creativity in how people connect with one another. And I think it's a big miss. I want to tell you a story about a email that I fired off. I talked about this in my growth group. I might have mentioned it on the podcast. I can't remember, but I had a potential deal out, $7,500 deal that was out. And I had gotten, this is like how every deal goes, right? I got verbal confirmation, like I verbally closed it. Prospective customer was like, yes, let's do it. I fired off the contract. I was in a hurry, had to leave. I said, hey, I'll send the contract over. And contract never got signed. Many of us have been in this position, right? Where the customer is like, yes, I need this. Yes, I want to buy this. Yes, I'm ready to move forward. And yet the customer did not move forward. There's many of us who have experienced the pain of that contract that's just waiting to be inked. It's just waiting to be signed. Now, I think the more you do business, the more you're going to start to realize if someone is a prospective buyer, despite them not signing the contract yet, versus someone who was never going to sign the contract. I think it's the person who says, Yeah, let me talk to my spouse about it, which is a very common objection, throwing the spouse under the bus. Let me talk to my spouse about it. You can usually know that this is someone who actually isn't interested in buying from you, but they're letting you off easy. And I've learned, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, when I get an objection like this, I typically, I don't want to say call them out on it because it's not abrasive or rude, but I typically try to bring it back to a heart of candidness on, I usually say one of two things. I say, I totally get it. Would it make sense for the three of us to get together and talk about this? Because I've never wanted to discount someone who operates with their finances with their most important person in their life, with their spouse. I've seen some really toxic conversations around this on like, oh, you don't wear the pants in the family. Oh, you need someone's permission. And it's like, that's just not the way I roll. I mean, from my perspective, my wife and I, we're one, we make decisions together. And so it doesn't bother me if someone says, I need to talk to my spouse, my husband or my wife. The other thing that I might do though is sometimes, not always, but sometimes someone might say, hey, I really need to talk to my spouse about this. Let me get back to you in the next couple of weeks. I'll typically say, hey, thanks for letting me know. Usually when someone says that to me, it's because they're trying to let me down easy. And I want to give you the option. If you genuinely don't think this is the right fit, I want you to know you can tell me that in case you feel uncomfortable with being direct with me. And I try to say it's something like that where it's not awkward or tense. And usually someone will say, I say usually, I don't actually get into this conversation that often, but someone will typically say, you know what, I do really want to talk to them, but I don't think it's the right fit, but who knows, let me still talk to them. And that's usually a signal of like, okay, we at least got on the same page about this. Or they say, no, really, I really am interested. And then from there, it's just a matter of, okay, well, when should we talk about it, right? When's the next time we should follow up? And I said, don't use that word. When's the next time we should connect again, right? But beyond all of this, I want to encourage you to think about how to be more creative in your sales process. So like I was saying earlier, I had a guy, we had verbal agreement on the deal, $7,500. Contract had not been signed. The invoice had not been paid. The first half of the contract hadn't been paid. And I called this guy, emailed, couldn't get anything, couldn't get a text response, and was kind of like, dude, this guy has disappeared. Like, what has happened to this guy? Now, again, so I think some people are a little overly toxic about this kind of stuff where they're like, I don't chase customers. They come to me. And it's like, well, bearing in mind for some of your customers, reminding yourself that you're not in their top 5 list of priorities, you're probably like number 37. So if you can look for opportunities to, without, putting yourself over a barrel, to get back into their top of mind, that's in your best interest. But the sort of like ego driven, if they're not, begging to work with me, I won't work with them. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. So here's what I did. I got creative. I was thinking about this person and I was thinking, man, it's hard to get a hold of it. It literally feels like this person has vanished. I haven't run into them, haven't seen them, can't hear from them. Like they are basically a missing person. And that gave me this idea. It gave me an idea to essentially put out a missing persons request or report, notice, whatever, a missing persons report on this prospect. I'm also a big fan of video, which, by the way, standing out, being different, separating yourself from your competition. And if you do any social media work, you've ever worked with like a social media agency, you've probably heard time and again about pattern interruption, about breaking the rhythm that people fall into when they're just scrolling through social media. So how do you break that cycle and stand out to someone? So I was thinking a lot about this. And so I do video a lot with that. I think it's a great way to connect and give someone like a first impression. Anytime I send a cold email to someone, if I can, I'll attach a video to it. That's like a very brief, like, "Hey, I'm a real person. Hello, nice to meet you." And by the way, I do video even when it doesn't. There's nothing to benefit me with. I had a customer, a fairly large customer last year that essentially moved to their own internal team. And they said, "Hey, we're ending our work with you." And I already knew this was coming because it was a fairly pricey gig. And the person who was my contact person had left. And, it just wasn't a great, I knew it was a matter of when, not if this contract ended. But even when that contract ended, I sent a brief video to two people I didn't really know and just said, "Hey, thanks so much for your partnership. I wish you the best. Best of luck. Take care." Because that's just how I want to do business. So I like to do video a lot. But so I knew how to create a GIF or a GIF. I don't want to fire anyone up today. I knew how to create a GIF on Canva. So I took this video and it was basically like me being a stupid, silly person, as if I took my hands as if I was looking through binoculars and looking around, like trying to find this person. And I put in big, bold letters, "Missing person." And I put the person's name. So I cut that, created it into a GIF. I emailed it to my customer. It was about 4:30, maybe 4:45 on, I don't know what day it was, like a Thursday afternoon or whatever. End of the workday though, regardless. So I cut this GIF, I email it to him, and the email says "Missing persons report" or "notice," whatever. And then the body, which by the way, like in hindsight, the logic of this doesn't make sense. On a missing persons poster, you don't you put the person missing, right? But I wanted to put myself on there. So the email said, this is notice of a missing person. If you've heard from him, please let me know. We are in the middle of working through this deal, but we've yet to see a contract signed or an invoice paid. Please send any information to myself. Here's my phone number. Here's my email, what have you. And I made it as like silly as I could, I guess. So I send that email. Again, it's about 4:45 in the afternoon. I go to play with my kids. Well, I look at my phone at about maybe 5:45, 6, and I have a text. So my kids are taking a bath. My office is right next to the bathroom. Kids are in the bathtub. I step away for a second, sit down on my computer, pull out my phone. It's a text from this person, my prospective customer. Well, at the same time, my computer was open onto my email, and I had an email at the top of the email list that said, "Your DocuSign has been complete." And then I had a notice from my invoicing service that said, "Your invoice has been paid." So I see these emails and I'm thinking, I already know what this is. Look at the text, and it's basically, "Can you talk?" Give him a phone call. He's laughing. He's like, "Dude, I loved that email. It was so good. I already sent it to a few different people. Great. This was just great. This was really fun." And we chatted a little bit. All that to say, I closed the gig, closed the deal, started working with this customer. They're a great customer. They're awesome. Understand and understand something for a second. Doing all of that took about 5 minutes. It took a few minutes to create the GIF. I'm not sitting in front of a camera, getting the lighting just right, doing all these different takes. I'm just doing it, cutting it, turning it into a GIF, and firing off the email. First draft email. I didn't go to ChatGPT. I didn't say, "Hey, can you write for me a missing," which is a whole nother conversation. Like we've got to uncouple ourselves from, like, we've got to be able to have an original thought ourselves too, guys. So did all this in about 5 minutes, fired it off, sent it off. And here I am, deal closed an hour later. That is creativity in sales. That's creativity in business. Take that idea versus emailing this person with, "Hey man, just following up. I noticed you haven't signed our contract. I noticed you haven't paid our invoice. Just want to see if there's anything I may have missed or any questions you might have. Please let me know. As always, I'm happy to serve you. Signed, Blake." your desperate friend, Blake. Like that second one, I mean, it sounds silly and stupid compared to the first, but why is that the one we always send? Why do we always send that version? We're living in a time where we're just so, I don't want to say it's laziness, but we lack so much intentionality around the creative process of how we talk to people and communicate with people and stand out to people that we then wonder like why customers don't have a meaningful experience with us. And it's because we're giving them the experience that they're getting from literally everyone else. I was talking to a friend of mine today about how companies stand out. And he was like, man, everybody says customer service. And it's true. Everyone says customer service. When you ask a company, why are you different? Why are you the best choice? They typically say, we value our customers. We care about we give great customer service. And yet, so few businesses exist that have actually given you a meaningful, transformational experience. Think about the number of companies that you've done business with that to this day, at whatever age you are, has stuck with you for the kind of business they did with you, the kind of service they delivered to you. I can think of maybe 3 or 4 that come to mind. And one of them that comes to mind isn't even it wasn't even my experience. One of the examples that comes to mind is Chewy, the pet company, where someone bought dog food. The person then, they got the dog food. They emailed Chewy and said, hey, my dog actually passed away. I need to return this. I'm sorry. And the person from Chewy said, no, keep it. Keep it and donate it to a shelter. And by the way, they then they then mailed a card and sent flowers. It cost them $30, $40 to stand out forever in this person's mind. And then maybe that's like the bigger point is we're so into this concept of scale and like, what does this mean in the big picture? And like, how do I really, there's like some huge garbage truck driving by my house right now. We're so into this conversation on like, yes, I want to be different. Yes, I want to stand out. Yes, I really want people to have a different experience with me. But then we're so freaking lazy and cheap and unwilling to do those things that actually create that experience for your customer. And I think part of the pain point in all this is how little thought we put behind the conversation of it. When we talk about customer service, a lot of what comes to mind is I didn't scream at the customer. I didn't cuss the customer out, even though they may have deserved it. I was polite despite being treated rudely. And that's how we see customer service instead of actually thinking about from the moment they said yes to me and they agreed to give me their dollar. How was I intentional about that whole process from the moment they started with me to the moment that they moved on from me? I think it even starts before the dollar. It starts in the sales process. The sales process is one of the best ways that you can communicate to someone that, hey, we do things a little bit different. The way we sell to you is different, and you're going to experience that from the front end with us. We're going to clue you in that we do business differently than everybody else just by the way we try to sell you. Like we're missing it. We're missing such a huge opportunity when we fire off the email that's just like everything else and the DM that sounds like every other DM that fills up our inbox. Now you may be thinking, hey, I'm not creative. I just don't have that. I don't have a creative bone in my body. Part of me wants to say, well, okay, then, all right, fine. Then you can use ChatGPT for some ideas. But even beyond that, I mean, replace Replace creativity with sincerity. Can you be sincere? Do you know how to send a letter in the mail and put a stamp on it? There's a number of ways you can stand out. It doesn't have to be funny or different. If you are the most boring person in your family, you don't have to try to come up with a clever, fun way to connect with someone. You just have to be sincere. You just need someone to realize this business is not like anyone else. What I have found is that the reason that most people aren't leaning into these things is because they really are just lazy. They're lazy, or they aren't willing to put in the time to really process it and think about it. I'm worried about our future businesses if we lose sight of this concept. If we lose sight of the value of just doing good business. Good business is not about moral business. It's not about you didn't rob your customer. It's like, what are the good habits that we want great businesses to be known for? There's this funny theory. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's a conspiracy theory, but there's this theory called the dead internet theory. And I call it a conspiracy theory because I think the conversation around this is something like there's like men in black, in dark rooms who are like pulling the strings and like trying to, get rid of humanity. It's some crazy conspiracy theory. But the dead internet theory has become more mainstream because what it essentially says is that the internet will be so full of unoriginal content at some point that we will lack seeing genuine original thought. I probably butchered that. Think of it another way. If all that ever gets posted is the same memes, and bots are just reposting the same memes and the same pictures, which by the way, if you're on Reddit, you've seen this happen a million times already. Someone posts a picture of, their grilled cheese sandwich and they're like, my grilled cheese sandwich looks like Snoop Dogg or Jesus or whatever. And then everyone's like, oh, this is so great. And it has all these comments on it and all these upvotes and what have you. And then you look at like the 8th comment down and the person says, hey, this person's actually a bot. They're just reposting the same picture that was posted 12 years ago. And then you go and you look and you see, wow, that actually is the case. This is a bot account. This is someone just reposting content. And then you start to realize how much content out there is just picked up and spit back out. And we're just having the same cycle of taking this. I mean, if you don't believe me, look at thumbnails on YouTube. Look at thumbnails on YouTube and how many of them look exactly the same. I think about like this is totally my YouTube algorithm, but what's it called? It's called like hit pieces, but it's like the 30 to 40 minute videos that talk about like the latest celebrity who like made a big mistake. So I think about there was some drama with Mr. Beast or Jake Paul or Logan Paul or whoever. And it's a picture of their face. And then in big letters, it says, he's done. And there's another version of that that's like, it's over. And you see all these thumbnails that come from all these different people that are all exactly the same. So the dead internet theory, essentially what it's saying is we're moving to a point where we don't have genuine, creative, independent thoughts. And I think when we don't pay attention to that, when we don't think about that, we're risking losing something deeply valuable long term. Your creativity is a superpower that's worth embracing. So don't miss out on the potential impact you could be having with your buyers, with your current customers, with people that you're engaging with day after day. Embrace your creativity. Hey, that's today's Good Advice episode. If you enjoyed the podcast episode, I'd love to hear what you thought about the show. You can always email me, blake@goodadvicecoaching.com, to let me know what you thought about it. And don't forget, if you ever thought about advertising on the podcast, you can always reach out again, blake@goodadvicecoaching.com, or you can support the podcast on our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. Thank you so much to all of our sponsors and supporters of the show. And thank you to you, the listeners of the podcast. I so appreciate it. That's today's good advice. We'll catch you later. See ya.